On February 28th, 2022, just 4 days after the war started, I went to a hair salon near my home in Rostov-on-Don, not too far from Ukraine, where I was living at the time, to have my hair cut. While waiting for my turn in a queue, a friend of mine called. He knew I was an expert on Russia and asked what I thought would happen next. Right there, I gave my first economic and military forecasts for this war. Basically, I told him to expect two major things in the future. First was the economic collapse of Russia and the lowering of the living standard of regular people as the result. In other words, I told him to expect that the Russian people will eventually pick up the bill for this war. And the second thing I said was to expect bombings of Russian territory because Ukrainians will be striking back sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. And then when I was done speaking, and I was speaking on the phone, I saw everyone in the hair salon staring at me. It turns out they all heard what I was saying. They didn't seem scared or concerned. They were looking at me with disbelief in their eyes, as if I were utterly insane. In their minds, in the minds of those people, on that day in February, there was not even a remote possibility of the war affecting their lives and their lives being threatened by military actions. They thought I was insane, but to me it was them who were insane. Today, 3 years later, Russians are getting exactly what I forecasted on that February day, the payback. Their lives are worsening by the day, and they are attacked physically. I think it is the most important theme for the news this week, and this is what I want to share. Howdy, howdy, friends. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Welcome to Wacky Wednesdays, straight out of the mad circus that Russia has unfortunately become. But first things first, there's no such absurdity that cannot be realized in Russia these days. Please do not forget that. And the news? I call them Wacky Wednesday news from Russia. The news of Russia that matter and that you will not find in any mainstream media. This week I want to do something a bit different. Instead of giving you a wide range of news, I want to focus on what I find a very important theme for Russia these days, this week. Oh, probably the months to come. And that is how lives of ordinary Russian people have changed over 3 years. I will show it through the news that happened in Russia recently and give you my commentaries. Let's go. First, I want to explain why my forecasts 3 years ago were the way they were. What they were based on. Russia treacherously invaded a close neighbor, a cousin, Ukraine. The entire world turned against Russia. Foreign investors and businesses left. A record number of international sanctions was about to be placed on Russia. It was no brainer at the time. Russia was about to lose its bread makers, export of oil and natural gas. Also, didn't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that. Russians started leaving the country on day one of the invasion. Those Russians who are good, smart, with hearts, with empathy, they started leaving. They started one of the largest exoduses from the country. The war needed to increase the expenses for the military. The military industrial complex was about to be rehauled and beefed up. On top of things, Russia started waging the war, and that's a very expensive ordeal with all the costs that come with the war. And as economist, I know that each of these things that I just named has a price tag for the economy and eventually for the people. And sooner or later, Russian people would pick up the bill for Putin's actions. I thought it would happen sooner. I initially thought the bill would be issued and presented to the Russian people sometimes in 2023. In reality, it has taken 3 years. And Russian people are finally picking up the war bill. It is very unexpected to them, to most of them. They thought that the war didn't concern them and wouldn't concern them. They were simply minding their own business for these 3 years and keeping their mouths shut. In return, they expected to be left alone, and they expected that their lives would not change. But I'm sorry, my dear fellow Russians, but it doesn't work that way. If you attack your neighbor, if you start waging an unjust war, if you are aggressor, then there will be a payback, one way or another. If you do not get interested in politics, you keep your mouths shut and you mind your own business, well, surprise, surprise, the politics get interested in you very much and they knock on your door, and this is exactly what's happening right now. The politics go, knock, knock, Russians, knock, knock, we're here. So they certainly did not expect the bill to be presented to them, and they're not happy. But hey, what's happening right now is payback. Let's look at this payback through the news that happened recently in Russia. And let me start with the biggest news of the week: the massive drone strike on Russian cities. I still remember the looks of those people, the looks in the eyes of those people in the hair salon. Somehow it's like a photograph in my mind, It's right there. It stays and it doesn't go away. They were mostly women in that hair salon in February of 2022, and I saw their eyes. They looked at me like, what in the hell are you talking about? We are going to be striked. We're going to be bombed in Russia, in Rostov. And I was thinking, it's inevitable. I mean, what do you expect? You attack another country, and especially in Rostov, which is about 40 miles from the border of Ukraine, which is a transportation hub and it's a HQ of all this military operation in Ukraine. That's where the commanders and generals sit. And I was thinking, and you think that you're not going to be affected? Well, anyway, I want to start with the most massive drone attack that has taken place in 3 years. It happened last night, and I have about a dozen or so videos of how apartment blocks are bombed in Russian cities and apartments burn. Okay? I will not show these videos here because I am afraid that YouTube will ban me for that. Instead, I am going to upload right after this live stream ends in my Telegram channel. So if you want to see them, Telegram doesn't censor anything. Go and sign up. And you don't even have to sign up. Go and just check it out. My Telegram is for videos like that, for information, for pictures that I cannot post to YouTube, and for updates. So go and check it out. You don't even have to sign up, but see those videos for yourself and understand that this is the payback. Now, in March of 2025, it's the cities of Nizhny Novgorod, Kursk, Ryazan, Moscow, Rostov-on-Don. A massive attack. So many drones in one night. But guess what? It has become new normal because that's not the first time. The first time happened in May of 2023, and the first drone attack was in Moscow on the place where I used to live, an apartment complex where we owned an apartment. My wife and kids were right next to the drone attack. One of the apartments was bombed, hit, and there were a dozen drones flying into different targets into Moscow. That was the first time, and it was shock. That was a series of attack on Moscow City, the skyscrapers in the center of the city in 2023 throughout the summer, and I covered it in my live streams and videos. Kremlin was bombed twice. The Kremlin, the very heart of Russian government. And basically, since then, the drone attacks, have become new normal. Rostov-on-Don gets attacked once a week on average. And those Russians who live there, they don't look at the drone attacks with eyes, with looks in their eyes like they looked at me. Now they understand that this is the new normal. And by understanding that, by being ready for the drone attacks, by not getting shocked from the drone attacks, that's how they are paying the price of war. And it's going to get worse for them. Now, military, I'm not a huge expert on military, and military out of the way, I will tell you what has happened in Russia recently. Another piece of news is about freedom. Russian parliament is demanding that public places on radio, on TV, play only Russian songs. This initiative is being introduced by the Senator Boris Chernyshov. I already mentioned this in the previous news, but know that this is being discussed in Russia right now, and they're seriously talking about basically playing only Russian songs on TV, on radio, and in public places, meaning that foreign songs and music will be banned. A personal story. I remember 1990 and 1991. It's actually late 1989. That's when the first big name bands from the United States and the UK started coming to Moscow. And to us, it was absolutely unheard of. Because just months before, foreign songs were banned in the USSR, unofficially, but you could not hear them much on TV and so forth. And then all of a sudden, the Iron Curtain dropped and these big bands came. And I remember in 91 in September, after the USSR fell apart, there was a huge concert with, I think, millions of people showing up. It was called the Monsters of Rock. Oh my gosh. I still remember that. I was still going to high school. What a breath of fresh air it was. What a breath of fresh air it was. It was intoxicating. It was such a good feeling. We felt like we finally were getting rid of our handcuffs. We're finally free to listen to what we want. The government doesn't dictate the playlists any longer, okay? It's us. We are free. And fast forward to 2025. Now Russians are going to step one, going back to step one, to not even Brezhnev or Gorbachev times to Stalin times. That's the bill. They're picking up the bill and they will be paying it for a very long time. Another piece of news is about political competition. Yakutsk city parliament supported the abolition of direct mayoral elections. This news I also mentioned in the past, so it's a done deal now. 25 out of 29 deputies, local deputies, participated in the voting, and 20 of them voted yes to the abolition, and 3 voted no, and 2 abstained. The majority in the local parliament, belongs to Putin's political party, United Russia. It's not like political competition still exists in Russia. No, it doesn't. But at least before, they were making a facade. They were putting a good mask on their faces that, look, we have elections, but not any longer. They want to eradicate even the formalities. Voting by people, for mayors. And Yakutsk is not the only province in Russia that does that. Others, there's political purge going on right now. This is certainly not going to make people's lives better, because one thing that makes lives better is competition. Business competition makes for better products, and political competition makes for better politicians. This abolition in Yakutsk and all over Russia, really, is the bill that Russians are picking up. Well, unwillingly, but hey, that's what you do when you invade your neighbor. The next piece of news is also about freedom of speech. You see, the door completely closed for YouTube in Russia. No, that's a done deal also. YouTube will not be returned until Google pays off its debts to Russia. That's what came from Russian parliament. I quote, Google's debt to Russian television channels has already reached a figure with many zeros. In addition, in January of this year, Google was fined more than 8 billion rubles for ignoring previous fines. And there will be no confidence, and there's no confidence right now that the company is ready to fully pay all these fines, and most importantly, eliminate what caused them to be imposed, to censor certain things. I just quoted Anton Nemkin, a member of Parliament's Committee on Information Policy, one of the people who actually creates and introduces and supervises state information policies. Imagine that. That's what he said last week. Let me remind you that the debt that the senator is talking about, it has reached 2.8 decillion rubles. That's a number with 39 zeros. I think it's more than all the money in the world combined. Okay, I think that's more than stars in the sky. Obviously, Google will never ever pay the fine. I don't think people at Google are taking it seriously. Therefore, YouTube will not come back, and therefore Russians cannot watch YouTube any longer. And that's the bill that they're picking up. And that is not making their lives any better. Everyone I know complains that they cannot access YouTube because there were plenty of things to watch, to learn, and to be entertained. Okay? No more. That's the price that you pay for allowing your government silently perhaps, but allowing to invade another country and doing nothing about it. Again, I remember 1991. The Iron Curtain fell down, fell apart overnight, and the world locked into Russia. Our eyes opened. We could. There was a complete censorship on publishing of books, and all of a sudden, in '91, you could create a company and publish any book you wanted, anything, by Russian oppositioners, by Solzhenitsyn, by Nabokov, um, by anyone, by the that was insane. And all of a sudden, books that had been in such deficit, all of a sudden they appeared in sold freely, and we started seeing foreign programs on TV. We started listening to Europa Plus radio station when they played foreign music. We started reading Western magazines, and our eyes opened, you know. And it was again such a good feeling. It was a feeling that our future is bright, that we're moving to find the right direction finally. Now, the very opposite is happening. It's called the digital prison, and Russian people are being forced into the digital cells very, very fast. But hey, that's the bill that they are picking up. They're gonna be doing it for a long time. They'll be paying it. Oh yeah, a long time. I'd like to move on to money. Oh, money, money, money. What a topic. It turns out that the central bank just announced that, well, a couple weeks ago, I mentioned it already, but I find this news fascinating, okay? The central bank announced the proposal of the KGB to limit withdrawals of cash from personal accounts. Russian law enforcement agencies, well, one agency really, the KGB, have proposed restricting citizens' right for free withdrawals of their own funds from the bank accounts using automatic teller machines. In other words, now if you want to withdraw your money, you have to go to bank. Well, it hasn't been done. It's been proposed and discussed, but if it happens, if it gets done, then you would have to go to a bank, request for withdrawal, and probably wait for some time, and bank would approve or disapprove your request for withdrawal, notify you saying, hey, Konstantin, you can withdraw, 10,000 rubles. And probably they would require you to explain how you're going to spend the money and so forth. Anyway, this measure is being discussed by the authorities right now. That hasn't been done, but it's being discussed. So, Russian people, and I'm sure that it's going to be done one way or another, so they're going to end up in a situation where they have money, their own personal money in the bank, and, they look at the number, the number is there, but they will not be able to withdraw the money. But they would have to pay taxes on that money. That's perfect, and that's what I call picking up and paying the bill, literally, because the war expenses that Russia is doing, spending money on the military-industrial complex and Russian military, will literally be financing from people's personal accounts that will be frozen for people but open for the state. Well, nice. That is the price that Russian people are paying and will be paying for waging the war in Ukraine and not getting interested in politics. Let's move to the state control. In Russia, the senators are discussing introducing state control over real estate prices. Again, this piece of news happened about 10 days ago, and I mentioned it before, but again, I find it absolutely fascinating, and I want to emphasize your attention. Um, they want to introduce state control over real estate prices. In other words, if you want to buy an apartment block or a house, you would have to somehow get approval of the price that you would want to sell it for, or would the state probably would dictate you the price, and that is the first step. What is their goal? To gain complete control over real estate. What would be the second step? Introducing permission system to sell personal real estate. The USSR. Well, we didn't own any real estate in the USSR, but government was building apartment blocks and allowing citizens to occupy apartments, and it was considered your apartment, but you didn't own it. Okay, but you had the legal right to live there, and the government would give you the right, and it could take the right, would basically kick you out at any time. Usually happened to oppositioners who was standing up against the Soviet system. They didn't like that. So anyway, in order to move to a different city or place, or in a different district within the same city, change apartment basically, you would need to, you couldn't sell it, you would need to exchange it, and the government would have to give you a permission to do that. So it happened before. They know how to do that well. They remember the system, and this is what they're gonna do. The goal: to control real estate completely. Because what are people without real estate? They're easily controlled and easily made into whatever government needs them to do. So, the next, let's talk about the transformation of Russia's education system. There's been quite the change of the entire education system. Patriotism lessons have been introduced in Russia, first in high schools, then in grammar schools and kindergartens, and now everywhere. And now the emphasis is not on education, but on conditioning, indoctrination. Um, Russian state started militarizing educational systems, schools, universities. Russian state has rewritten history. There's a special ministry that is doing that. It's called the Ministry of Education. Russian state has made it extremely difficult for high school children to finish high schools. Instead, the students are pushed to quit high schools and go to vocational schools for last 2 years, of high schools. They want to be made into workers. The state has introduced censorship at schools, at universities, and right now the censorship is nearly complete. And this is today's news. As the cherry on top of the cake, this I want to tell you what happened today, and that's quite amazing. The Speaker of the upper chamber of Russian Parliament, Valentina Matvienko, a very close friend of Putin, just proposed reducing the admission of applicants to capitals, universities, universities in two cities, in Moscow and St. Petersburg, and the third is Kazan. There are simply too many students there, according to Matvienko, university students. She said, today universities are increasing enrollment for purpose to earn more profits. They are gathering students from all over the country, and then they create specialists in the industries, in the professions that are not needed in the labor market in such numbers. Amazing. Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Kazan historically have the best universities in Russia. And if you want your child to receive the best in Russia, well, you obviously send it to Moscow, number one, St. Petersburg, number two, and Kazan, number three. That is the reason. We moved to Moscow in 2017 from Rostov. One of the reasons was to send Oля to a university in Moscow. And then we had plans for Dasha and for Michael when he would graduate in 10 years. Why? Because Moscow has the best schools. The Moscow State University, the higher School of Economics, and so forth. And Matvienko tells otherwise. Well, the thing is, she says that because the state wants to control lives of Russian people unconditionally, like it did in the USSR. And you know what? Matvienko really knows what she's talking about. She knows how to control unconditionally very well. Born in 1949, she became big communist boss in 1972. Just think about it. 52 years ago. 52 years ago, she was the boss in the USSR. From 1972 to 1991, for 19 straight years, she was making an excellent career in the Communist Party of the USSR, becoming one of the chief communist leaders in Leningrad, what is now St. Petersburg. She was professional communist. And now she's one of top Putin's people in Russia. She merely does what she knows best, controlling people's lives. She's not a communist by name any longer. She's, of course, a Democrat, and she's, one of the leaders of the Free Political Party United Russia, so-called free. So she's far from communist, but her methods are communist. She knows best. This is the payback. Only the bill is not being picked up by Russian adults. The bill will be picked up by their children, by Russia's next generation. And basically, what is being done right now is ruining kids' lives. I know, I've been there before. I grew up in the USSR. Quite emotional news. Before moving to the next news, thank you. I want to thank you, everyone who is watching right now, everyone who likes my videos, who comes back every day to watch, who comments, who subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Thank you for praying along with me at the end of live streams. Thank you for sending me good wishes, supporting me through buying me coffee at buymecoffee.com, at PayPal, at Patreon. Thank you so much. I promise that demonetized or monetized doesn't matter, and I'm currently demonetized. It's going on the eighth months right now. Not making a penny from Google, but I promise you, no matter what, I keep on going because you inspire me by your support, by your love, by your prayers, and by your wishes. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. The next piece of news comes from the authorities of Taliati. Taliati is a city, quite large city, but not the largest. It's a city in the central Russia. It's a city of about 600,000 people. It officially announced the death toll of its residents in what Russia is calling special military operation, the war in Ukraine. A total of 459 military personnel are buried in the cemeteries all over the city. Of course, this is not the final figure. There are still those who are missing in action, who were left in the fields. have not been recovered, who have been not buried so far, and of course, the plenty of those who are maimed. Taliati is just one of dozens and dozens of cities of that size. There are 18 million and above cities in Russia, and triple amount of those who are half million. So do the math. Even if we trust these numbers, probably they're sugar coated because they have been officially admitted. And by the way, this is the first time that I saw official information coming from authorities of some kind, not the federal, but the local authorities, since September 21st, 2022. That's when the mobilization was announced. So this is the first time. This is a very important news. But imagine how many Russians are dead. And this is the bill that Russians are paying, because those Russians are someone's fathers, sons, husbands. A very sad thing is that Ukrainians are also paying the very same bill, courtesy of Russian people. And no one understands why. Everyone understands why Russians are paying the bill, but no one understands what Ukrainians did to deserve that. And that is very sad. Moving to the next piece of news. It also comes from one of Russia's cities. And I have a video I would like to show you. This is economic news. Take a look. Our folks were just feeding our friends, Georgia, Abkhazia, and other countries. And you should be taking care of your own people, of pensioners. My pension is 15,000 rubles, but I have a utility bill for January, 28,000 rubles. Why? Last year I paid for heat 12,000 rubles. Now it's 28. Where these numbers come from? I don't understand what the hell is going on. February is a short month, and on such amount, 28,000 rubles. And then they saying that in March the recommended payment is 40,000. I am retired and I am forced to have a job just to pay the utility bills. What am I gonna do? What I'm gonna eat? I need to buy some things. Yes, we are demanding to prosecute all responsibles in this chaos. That chaos that is happening against Russian people. Residents of Russian city, southern city of Krasnodar. Not the poorest people, because look at the way they are dressed. They are, I would say they're not middle class, but they're not the poorest class in Russia. And this pensioner, she wears sneakers, decent sneakers, and everyone wears decent clothing. And yet, speaking up like that, they are risking a lot, okay? And it means that they are so fed up by what's going on. And I believe this woman who was just telling us that, her utility bill is 28,000 and she only gets paid 15,000 as a pension. So she needs 2 pensions, 2 months to pay for 1 month utility bill, right? So she's forced to work. I believe her. Thing is, similar sites are seen everywhere in Russia, and almost daily I run into these videos where people get together and ask Putin to do something about their situation, to send them doctors, to take care of the roads, to fix the postal service, to increase their pensions, and so forth. And Russians who are only in desperate situation, who are only fed up would do something like that, because Russians are professional sufferers. They keep quiet usually. It takes an extraordinary event for them to stand up, record a video, and send it out there in the public, hoping that someone important, powerful, strong man will see that and will right the wrong. Okay? This is the result of actions of Vladimir Putin. I clearly remember him saying on 24th of February, 22nd, I made the decision to attack Ukraine. This is me. I made the decision. My decision. And that's what you get 3 years after. Again, I thought this would come sooner, much sooner. Took a little longer. I was telling 3 years ago that these results would come. These people are definitely feeling it now by their skins. They are literally paying the war bill. They're picking it up, like I've been saying for the past 3 years. If you watch my streams regularly, this is the term I usually use. Russians will pick up the bill for this war eventually. They are picking up the bill. They're paying for the utilities twice as much. Guess where the money go to? Russia takes its hairy, greasy hand and puts it deeper into their pockets because it needs money to finance the war. Hey, that's the price you pay, literally. If I saw these people face to face, I would ask them, why didn't you say anything on February 24th of 2022? Why didn't you make a video? 3 years later, it's a little too late. By the way, news like that come out in large numbers every single day now. It's really crazy. If you want to keep up with other breaking news from Russia, become patron of Inside Russia every single day. I carefully select and post 9 news that I find important with my commentaries and analysis. And the news will keep you informed on everything you always wanted to know about Russia, but didn't know where to look. You know now. I'm going to put the link down below in the comment section, in the pinned comment, and in the description. So check it out. I promise you, you will like it. The last piece of news is very hard to watch. I was thinking quite a bit about including it or not including. And I mean, it's hard to watch. The reason I included this video, and I'm going to show you, is that this is the Russian side of catastrophe, I would say. But there's another side, on the other side of the border, in Ukraine. And people there, they die for just defending their country. No one understands why Russia invaded Ukraine. Okay, they have the same tragedies there. Only the difference is Russia is the aggressor and Ukraine is defending itself. Okay, so anyway, this is a short summary of what happened. A military police hunted a wounded man who came back from the front line to recover. They hunted him down and kidnapped right in front of his underage daughter and in front of Russian people in the middle of a city, in the center, in the daylight. They beat him down, packed him into the car, and are intending to send him into the front lines to die. The reason for that, he came back to, heal from a wound that he incurred, and he refused to go back, saying that he'd rather go to prison. He wasn't hiding from anyone. He said, hey, arrest me, and criminally prosecute me, I'm going to serve time in prison because I don't want to go back. I will not go to back. I will not go back there. But no such luck. And this is what happened to him. Check this out. They are arresting right in front of the underage daughter. She's screaming, "Daddy, daddy, papa, papa." On top of her lungs. "No. Daddy, I'm going with you. Please let me." The passerbyers. The guy is filming. I want you to take a look. The passerbyers. They just shake their hands and look the other way, like it's not happening. Please, please, let me in. Please. Who are you? Please call the police. Call the police. Where are the police? Why are you taking him? He's a deserter. Why are you filming me? Stop filming me. You can't, you don't have right. Please, let my baby go.
Какой отдел повезете?
I'll kill you, she's the teenage
Какой
girl
отдел
screaming.
повезете?
Where are you taking him?
Какой отдел повезете?
None of your business, they say.
Я сейчас прокуратуру.
I'm going to call the internal investigation. Where are you taking him? Which station are you taking him?
Зачем вы физическую силу применяете?
Why are you beating him? Why are you putting him? Why are you putting force on him?
Ну ладно,
Tell me where are you taking
зачем
him?
физическую силу применяете?
They're just clearly kidnapping this guy. Tell me, please, tell me where you're taking him. So she kicks the car, and this guy comes out and he threatens to kill this teenage girl. I'm gonna kill you, and then she
Да,
swears.
ничего, ибо вам баба
Says,
платит.
don't, just you'll fix it. You get paid for what you do.
Ты ребенку не угрожай нахуй.
Don't threaten the child. I don't know how about you, but it was really difficult for me to watch it. These people are kidnapping him. They do it from unofficial approval of the police, by the way. Police simply turns away and looks elsewhere, okay? That teenage girl does not have a single person in the world to help her and her father. Certainly not in Russia. Most Russian people who happen to be at the site of that crime, and that is definitely a crime committed by the federal employees. So the passerbyers, all Russians who are there, they simply turn away and keep on going. That girl's father is a dead man walking. That girl is picking up the bill. Her father is picking up the bill. And I guarantee you there are cases, probably hundreds, if not thousands, cases of just like that all over Russia. It's just this happened to be filmed. And there will be more cases like this. A quick information for you, and there's something to think about, especially for the Americans. Guess who those agents were? They weren't undercover, they weren't dressed, but they definitely were military police acting as mafia. That's Russia's ICE. Those government agents were Russia's ICE for years. They were hunting legal and illegal immigrants in Russia for 20 years, for 2 decades. They were arresting and beating immigrants, and Russian citizens simply looked away and kept on going. I was beaten by the police once in my life, okay? And the reason for that was that I tried to bail out, to stand up for 4 men from Uzbekistan. I don't know if they were legal or illegal. I don't know the status of their papers. It was 2007. I saw 4, just happened that they were not too far from me and they were walking, minding their own business. And I mean, you could you could always tell when a person came to Russia as migrant worker to work and send money to his family in Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan. Anyway, they were working, minding their own business, and all of a sudden a local co-op on the ground saw them, a patrolman, I guess, and he started screaming at them, started threatening them, started extorting a bribe. They didn't have the money. He said, "I'm arresting you," and they didn't resist. They simply like very quiet people, and I saw their faces. They dropped because they were going to be arrested, perhaps deported, perhaps I don't know. So I came up, and I'm a Russian citizen, and I certainly did not. I never had any fear of cops. I could beat a cop because I worked for a company who was powerful enough to bail me out. Okay, never did that, but I never had fear of cops. So I came and I firmly asked him what he was doing, and he said, "Mind your own business. Keep on going." I said, "No, I'm not going to mind my own business. I'm going to put you into the light. Please introduce yourself." And by law, a policeman must introduce himself, give a badge number, and his name. And he refused to do that. And I was started, pressing him firmly to do that. What he did, he did a hook. And right here, I had a black eye. But the thing is, I didn't dare to kick him back because that'd be trouble, okay? He let those 4 Uzbeks go. And that's one of the things I'm very proud in my life. I must have saved 4 people's lives. Perhaps not, I didn't save their lives, but I definitely bailed them out, okay? So those agents that you just saw, they were arresting and beating immigrants for decades. And when Russian ICE, that's what they were, ran out of immigrants and migrant workers and the war started, then Russian ICE turned after Russian citizens because that's what ICE does. First, it hunts down immigrants and then it turns them to citizens. That's simply how government, any government, not just Russian government, any, works if left unchecked. Bit by bit, it gets more power, more authority, more guns, more people. They get more bold, and that's what they do. Any government does that if left unchecked, as it happened in Russia in the last 3 years. Perhaps not 3 years, but longer. But anyway. And by the way, I know how to call Russians, after watching this, heartless people. Not all Russians, of course, but the majority. They are heartless people. When they see someone, one of their own in trouble, one of their own getting beaten by their own cops, who they pay, by the way, from their taxes, who they have a right to order not to do things, they simply look the other way and keep on going, minding their own business. They are heartless people. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the payback. This is what happens when Russian people, the society, allows the government to take complete control of their lives. This is what happens when the people are silent. They see atrocities going on around them with their own citizens and with neighbors, and they keep silent. This is what happens when the government gets strong enough to oppress people. It starts enslaving people. What you just saw, I showed you, that man was beaten and put into the car, packed into the car by force. That's nothing but an act of official enslavement, disregarding any laws, any rights that still exist in Russia. And this is perhaps the most horrible part of this bill that Russians are picking up, because from now, Russia is in the period of transformation for a very long time. This is just the beginning. Things will not miraculously get better. They will not get back to normal, even if the war stops tomorrow. And many Russians think that that miraculously would bring everything back. No, no, and no. This is just the beginning. Remember that, and please keep on tuning in for more information, for more truth about Russia. I bet you do not get this information like this from many places. Carthago delenda est.